Checkout Tracking by the NPD Group brings you a receipt collecting system that gathers data anonymously through technology we created, providing your businesses with answers.
All right, so I'm really happy to be here, really coming from Germany, coming far away, but yeah, it's cool. The jet lag is a pain, but yeah. What I wanted to talk about today was, you know, I worked with games for about 14, 15 years. And if you work with games for a little while, you tend to kind of to either fall off and don't continue to work with games anymore, or you kind of tend to mentor and guide junior people coming into the industry. And this is generally what happened to me. I started to draft more onto roles that are kind of production driving, production team leading. Even though I come from a design background, I come from, you know, mechanics and what's fun. So to me, that's a bit of a clash. But there are some learnings coming from that, and especially doing the transition coming from AAA going into casual. So I'll talk about that. All right. So Good Game Studios in Hamburg. Have you ever been to Europe, Germany? Anyone? Germany? All right. Yeah. Hamburg, the second biggest city in Germany, and it's quite beautiful. As a company, it's existed since 2009 and has a lot of players due to the success of Empire. There's a lot of games that has been released by Good Game, but all are in the same genre. I don't know if you've heard of Shadow Kings, which was the latest game released. Yeah. We have a headquarters in Hamburg, and all our employees are there. Right now, we are 1,300 people, so that's quite a lot. Yeah, it's really clear what the company is doing. It's the type of RTS games that Empire 4 Kingdoms. But the problem is that we can't just make one type of game, so we really want to diversify our portfolio. So in order to do that, we really have to think about the structure of the company. Because you start to build one structure for one amount of people, and as the company grows, you really have to change. It doesn't work. The company was built in a very matrix-like structure. So one big studio with a lot of overhead, caring for disciplinary responsibility. And you know, you kind of lose ownership. And you lose commitment from the people, I would say, if you grow fast. So we started discussing what can we do to kind of recapture the kind of ownership that we had when we were a small studio. So we thought the only way to do that is to become a small studio again. So we couldn't fire people, of course. So so how do we do? So we thought, okay, so we have to break the company up into small silos or departments. So we created this system of having many studios within one studio. The Empire games was placed in one studio that's called Strategy Studio. So they were around 200, 300 people. And then 6, 7 other studios were formed to kind of work with different genres and different type of games. So this reminds me of what some of the other companies I've worked with having for an organizational structure, and it helps a lot. And I want to talk about why it helps and how can we kind of build a studio in what structure we should be using to keep that ownership. I found that I want really, and now I'm taking the perspective of the casual studio at Good Game, because I'm head of the casual there, so I'm going to talk about that studio and how we do it. It's really important for me and for us to have responsibility on the product leads. And the product leads for us are the producers that really have the complete responsibility of the product. So for me, that person really needs to feel responsible for a product and really needs to have full responsibility of all the resources working for that person. So that's why I have, if you look at the PowerPoint, I have a product lead and then everyone reporting into the product lead. Because in the end, it's the product lead that has the full responsibility of revenues coming in from the product. So then that person needs to have full control of the resources working to achieve that. The more you have outside, reporting outside, the more you have diverging kind of goals, the more problems you're going to get with the product. That's my opinion. So, and as we kind of broke into smaller studios, we also found that we actually have a lot of diversity in our different studios. Many people coming from different countries coming together, and that forces us to speak English in Germany. So that's a challenge in itself. So yeah. So this is us, and I think that this picture really shows the commitment and the engagement that we kind of see coming out of these smaller studio and departments, and that's the focus for us. So what do I do to kind of achieve this? So for me, the very first thing is to recruit. So that's really simple, right? Just recruit the right people. For me, it's super important, and I find that I spend 80% of my time recruiting, and I spend 80% of my time rejecting 80% of the people that I kind of go through. So I think I could spend an infinite amount of time going through people, and I still wouldn't be happy, because we all have our bar of quality that we need to find, and yeah, and as soon as you find the right people, you have to empower them. And so for me, I need to find the right people to have the confidence to empower them, to give them responsibility. So something that I look for when I try to find these people is I go to so many interviews and I talk to so many people. And these people that we're talking to, they are kind of high in the seniority. So they also go to a lot of interviews and talk to a lot of people that wants to hire them. And that shines through, I think. When you are in an interview situation, you try to see, how good is this person going to fit in the studio. It's really difficult to break through this kind of barrier that they put up. The barrier of answering the right questions, putting up the facade. This is what I need to answer. This is how I need to behave. And I really hate that. If I don't feel that I can break through that, then I don't know if I can hire, because I really have to break through that to see what is the person behind that barrier. So I spent, I can say, 50% of the interview trying to break through the barrier, because I know what he's going to answer in most of the questions anyway. So that's my main goal when I go through an interview. So what I do is actually, when I see the hole in this barrier, I don't go for it immediately. I make a couple of notes, and then when the person is more kind of because when the person goes through the kind of hole in the barrier where there's a question that the person is a little bit unsure, I make a note instead of attacking him right there and then, if I call it attacking. I wait until the person is more comfortable, because it could be very vulnerable. It could be like a too big of a reaction, so yeah. So when I kind of probe that, I really find out what the person behind the facade is. And I really look for these people that can remain calm, even though they get pressured. I really look for people who are quick thinkers that can kind of find solutions, even though I put them in difficult situations. And I'm really stubborn, so I don't let it go. So if I find a thing, I really, really dig there, like an infested wound, And if they survive that, then I think that they show really strong character. If they also then have the skill and the cultural fit, then that's a hire for me. But if I can't break through, then I usually find that there's something there most of the time, So I really can't pull the trigger and hire if I don't feel I got through this step. Okay, I have to speed up, sorry. I really think it's important to find their passion as well. If you have an interview, what is really making them passionate? Because it's, again, this barrier they set up, and sometimes you can't find it. You're just sitting there, he's answering all the questions, and you're not finding what he really thinks is amazing, what makes him come to work every day and feel that this job is amazing. It's really important for me. Surface weakness, it's, again, coming back to the point where you really need to find these spots in order to break through. And the cultural values that I mentioned, it's important because it's a team environment. They need to fit as a team. So for me, it's like as soon as you hire the people, you really need to put them in a position where they can really thrive. So that's part of the hiring process for me, is to make sure that they you find out where you can put them and make them take ownership of an area. It also makes a lot of sense. There's no sense hiring someone and then trying to squeeze them in somewhere where you're not sure that they can really make a change. and compromise immediately in the beginning. So I would just say it's really important that you put them in the right spot. And here is something that I think is really important as well. As soon as you find these people, and it's really important to give them ownership. Giving them ownership to me is that you let people get an area, get a part of the product or even the whole product, and then coach them to kind of make the best of their situation. And for me, coaching is not telling them what to do. That's the thing. For me, coaching is finding the answers in themselves. So when I coach, I really try to see how can the person I'm coaching find the answer? How can I reflect their ideas by just being there, listening to them, telling them what they can think about? I also really like to put people in situations where they are challenged automatically by being in a situation. I think that if a person isn't challenged, they're not motivated. If they're not challenged, they won't be growing. So, yeah. Another thing is working with creative people. I quite often find that there are many situations where they are afraid. They're afraid of showing what they're doing. They're afraid of you know, giving you early sketches or early ideas of what could be in the game. Or, and so it's always a push and pull relationship with creative people for me. And that's difficult in itself. But you never get this situation and never get this relationship with someone that is in the creative space unless you really set the bar high. Because if you're not aiming high enough, you won't be having the situation where you're not sure if you want to push or pull together with someone that is more in a management position. So as a manager, really, it's not up to me or a producer to tell an art director what exactly to do. I think it's up to the producer to just make sure that we push the bar really high, and perhaps higher than we thought. And then, you know, aim for the stars, and then you will maybe not hit the stars, but you will really come close. So, yeah, I think it's often forgotten. We have really clear goals. We have really, our C-level or management really want to accomplish some revenue goals, or the product needs to be like this, only a little bit different. But I think when you're working with these people, you need to put the challenges much higher, or you won't achieve the greatness. So. I think also that I found that at least with the teams that I've been working with, especially at Good Game and at King, this hands-off approach, it kind of, you shouldn't mistake it with not caring. You shouldn't mistake it with, you know, you go over there in your corner, I put you in a good situation, you know, I'll coach you from time to time, I'll check in once a month, and then that's it. I think you really need to build the loyalty with everyone, and that just takes time. So, you know, it's really difficult to find time if you're in a producer or a head of studio role, or in some kind of role where you're managing a team. It's super important to have these one-on-ones. I would say, don't make them one-on-ones. I would say just make them casual talks. You know, go away with some persons, with the people on your team, and make sure that they feel that you're listening to them, and you gain their loyalty by really spending time. There's no shortcut to that. So, and the bigger teams, the more difficult it is. So, right now I have a team of 60 people. We're going to grow to 100, and it's super difficult to keep that contact with everyone. So, I have to delegate out to other producers and assistant producers to carry that through, to carry that out for me, because I can't do it. But I really try. I try. So at least I identify the key people, and I spend time with them. You know, go for a coffee, just go around the block to the coffee shop, take a coffee, and make sure they're valued. It's, you know, if nothing else, then for retention, you know, you really want to retain these people. So the loyalty part is really a good way. So in the end, I would say that if you have a team where you really recruited a lot of people in a way where you spent time to find key people, you put them in positions where they can grow, you guide them, you coach them, and you make them feel that they're valuable, you give them the time and the one-on-ones and the meetings. So you did also find out where their passion lies. So you will get a really highly engaged and really motivated team, and they will be passionate about the product. So, and I think this is the important part. This is where you get the quality games out there. You won't get a really great game out there unless you have these passionate people doing everything for the game. So if you put 5 people and say, you have to do X, and that's what you have to do, and then you micromanage them every single day, you're not going to get anything great coming out of them. So any team that has performed something, produced a really great product, they all come from this background that they are really passionate about what they're doing. So I think if you create this passion, then I really think it shines through. So all right, and yeah, I think it boils down to having a really, for me, it's a Swedish way of treating people and handling teams. It's a bit hands-off, it's a bit giving ownership, coaching people into success, and making sure they're passionate about what they're doing and push that through the product. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right. Oh, I love the picture. Awesome. All right, so do we have any questions? We do. I'm just going to pass the mic straight to you.
Thank you. This picture of your studio, everybody seems so young. Do you have like people older than 30, for example?
That's a really good question, and it's being brought up a couple of times. What kind of, how do you spread out experience? Do you want senior? Do you want regular? Do you want new junior people? And how do you kind of, where do you put who, and what positions? Yeah, I think that we have a quite low average age at the studio. But I think I've managed to make sure that we have the most senior ones in the most important positions. So we have senior lead dev, we have senior producers, we have some senior product managers, project managers. And then you can fill up with juniors on regular positions like artists and stuff like that, so they can grow into it. I think there's a balance that needs to be struck, and I think you need to look at, the key positions, put regular to seniors there, and you can fill out with juniors in the other positions. I think that works great. I'm not afraid of having a low average age. I'm not afraid of that as long as I have the key people, senior.
Right, also works out cheaper too, right?
Yeah, but that's a reality as well. Yeah, okay, average salary.
And okay, another question back here.
Hiya. So one question. So you said that the product lead has the responsibility. And in your diagram, there was, say, a studio head above that, yeah. And then you also sometimes in your talk mentioned senior producers. So kind of like in that whole setup between those 3 roles, so who has kind of like the final call? And
yeah, when I mentioned senior producers, that's kind of, I was used to referring to producers working in AAA, and before I went into casuals, I slip into these kind of roles, or name of these roles. At Good Game, we call them product leads, and that's something between producer and executive producer. A product lead at Good Game has complete responsibility for one product on one platform. That's the way we have it right now. Everyone reports into that product lead. Lead dev, art director, lead designer, analytics, all of them. And below them, then, let's say the art director, you have the artist reporting into the art director. So it's very kind of, and then they report to me, and I report to the CEO. So it's, yeah, really flat structure. Can you veto stuff? Sorry, if I. Can you veto stuff? Yeah, but I really try not to. I'd rather have the team go in the wrong direction a little while, so they find out themselves that they didn't do anything, that they did something bad, as long as it doesn't completely throw off our release date or milestones. But yeah, I can veto. I want the teams always come to me and ask me, we want to do this. I just want to know why. I ask pros and cons, and I want to have the team aligned, and then they come to me and say, we want to do this. Why? I ask just the question why. And if the response is making sense, they just go. So I rarely veto.
How do you rank the importance of audio development in the indie game studio? Because is that something you hire internally for, or is that generally something you see as being always an outsourced solution?
That was an interesting question, actually, because I had, coming from King, I had contacts from the people that did the audio for Candy. So I had the possibility to take him on as freelance. And at the same time, I had someone employed in Good Game that I could also take in as a full-time to do the audio and the sound and the music. So that was like an interesting choice there, because we were going to do products that were casual, and the first game is going to be a puzzler. So the easy solution would go with the freelance, right? So in the end, I chose the full-time employee because I see it as a long-term. I want to develop that person and have maybe the possibility to develop him. So I put him in and let him do the sounds and music, and yeah, he's going to need to develop. But you know, I'd rather put some time into people. It's part of the loyalty. I think if I manage to develop him, he's going to be a great resource for the whole studio.
Does that become a concern when you look at developing different titles with different genres or styles of music that one individual composer can't manage or handle?
Yeah, but I think that we also hold the fact that we have 6 or 7 studios within Good Game, and they're taking different solutions to the kind of sound and music issue. And they have freelancers working with them, and some of them are going to hire. So there's always the possibility, if we're going to do something a little bit different than what fits to the casual mold of games, I think we can always borrow or get some resources there. But
at that point, and this will be my last question,
yeah, sure.
At that point, does your internal full-timer become the audio director of the title? Do you look to him to audio direct, or is there someone else on the team that takes on that role?
I think I see it like this. Product leads, they get the full game responsibility. They delegate everything out to whoever they feel right to delegate to. So the audio, in essence, it's their responsibility to have great audio. So they delegate it out, and I hope they take the same kind of hands-off and kind of ownership approach that I have. So I give the product leads ownership. They need to give ownership to their direct reports. So I'm hoping, and that's the way it works now, they give a lot of ownership to the audio guy, and he comes up with an approach. There's a discussion. We try a couple of things out, and then it goes on. And so that's generally how we work.
Does that discussion include implementation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that a recommendation in terms of like if there's a middleware tool to be used, or if it's directly implemented? Is that something that comes internally from your audio guy, or?
No, I think that the product lead really has the end responsibility. So the product lead needs to take the decisions. It needs to come at least to me and say, I want to do this, 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 and here's why, and sync it before with the audio guy, audio, music, composer, whatever you want to call him. But in the end, it's the product lead's decision to come to me and say, I want to do this, and then I say, that sounds good. If it doesn't sound good, I might have some questions, to ask about it.
So again, you're looking to your product lead to make that decision for you.
I have like an idea of how I think I should be doing it for the studio. I talk to my product leads and say, this is my ideas, what do you guys think? They come with some feedback. If there's no serious questions to that, I just go with it, and they have to then take that kind of direction and make the best of that within their product.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, can you show the studio structure again? I would love to review the slide. And then the second question is, do you have any tips on, in terms of interviewing potential employees, any tips on breaking the barrier? Any questions to ask?
Yeah.
Or any
I just listen to their voice, and when I feel that it's changing, I just tend to ask follow-up questions within that area and have long pauses, so they get even more nervous to see if they really, because. Yeah, but it's a small thing. You just, it's 1 second, So you ask a question, like I would ask you now. You put in a pause, and you wait a little bit, and then you put in a pause, and just wait a little bit, and then if there's nothing there, they won't react, and you can just continue on with your interview. You just have to be listening to them. That's how I do it. I don't have any kind of question that I usually. I tend to look for these, if they have left someplace, why did they leave? And then they will probably go into some, this barrier reason why, this is why. But then I try to see, is there something behind there that kind of can reflect on how it was to work there? And then if it reflects on something, how they felt working at this place, you go into why and what happened, and you can kind of take down your voice so they feel it's cool to talk about this now, and you know, and then you kind of see is there some weakness there. Yeah. Let me see if I
Never
can
underestimate
bring
the
up real
value of a good silence.
quickly. Sorry?
Never underestimate the value of a good silence.
All right, let me just try to here.
Sorry. Oh.
Yep. And
Can I? Oh.
just here. So this side prototype. This is like a little bit different. When you're doing prototyping, I see it a bit different. And on the left side, you have really production. It's different. Okay. For me, prototyping is really about small team, fast iteration. That's why I really put that structure up a little bit different. So I have one designer, one artist, and one dev. And then that designer supports 2 more small teams. So it's a third of a designer, an artist, a dev. A third of a designer, artist, dev, and then, you know, to have these small, iterative, fast teams.
All right. Well, I'm sorry to cut off the questioning, but unfortunately our time is up now. I just want to say a huge thank you to Daniel. Very informative, and I absolutely agree with you in your interviewing process. Okay. I'd love to interview you one day. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.